Yes.
Can you hear me all right? Okay. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for being with us for another webinar. I want to remind you that the next photo shoot to be organized by the European Top Model Agency, managed by Patrick Nellas and Antonella Spiteri, will be held on Saturday, 22nd May. That is, this coming Saturday, starting at 9 a.m. sharp at Salmoon Barracks. The theme will be bodysuits. The shoot is in conformity with all COVID measures issued by the public health authorities. To book a place, you need to contact Patrick and Antonella Spiteri through a private message on Facebook, and they can give you further information. We are sure you would agree with us that Gozo is a place of beautiful scenery and tranquility. This week's webinar introduces Gozo-born photographer Anthony Grech, who will truly reveal the beauty of an island that inspires in his fascinating photographic works. Born in 1986, Anthony Grech was raised in Xewkija, Gozo. He received his primary education at Xewkija Primary School and secondary education at the Sacred Heart Seminary in Victoria, Gozo. He furthered his studies at the University of Malta, from where he graduated as a teacher of Maltese and History in 2008. He has taught in different secondary schools in Malta and Gozo. At the age of 18, Anthony started developing his passion for photography. Throughout the years, he studied photography and developed a keen artistic eye, attracting the widespread attention. Anthony Grech was a co-founder of the Gozo Photography Association. During these years, Anthony Grech has set up and taken part in different local and international photographic exhibitions. Apart from this, his documentative and artistic photographs are often used in various publications and websites. He also published several photographic books related to Gozo. A couple of thanks as usual. Thank you to Stephen Buhajar for his support together putting up these webinars, Joseph Mifsud, our technical guru, and for streaming our webinars live on the MPS Facebook page, the Malta Photographic Society EXCO for their ongoing support, and also the Facebook groups for supporting us by promoting our webinars on their pages, namely in surname order Azzopardi Tony from Photografia Bejn il-Ħbieb, Kutajjar Alexander from Photography Shots, and Johan De Bono from All Photography. I will now hand over the word to the President of the Malta Photographic Society, Mr. Stephen Buhajar, to share with us some brief news regarding the Malta Photographic Society. Over to you, Stephen.
Thanks, Vince. As usual, I share a PowerPoint to help me in the presentation. Is it showing, Vince, please?
Yes, Stephen, yes.
So good evening, fellow members of the Malta Photographic Society. Hope all of you are fine and would like to thank you for joining once again another webinar presented to you by the Malta Photography Webinars in collaboration with the Malta Photographic Society. Anthony Grech, as introduced well by my friend Vince, is a teacher by profession, but for these past years, he dedicated most of his time taking pictures of the beautiful landmarks in Gozo. He also loves to capture local tradition, like the village feasts, and cultural aspects which one finds in this attractive island. In one of his latest publications, titled The Island of Hills, Grech, who is familiar with the history of his native island, has brought into the limelight the scenic beauty of the island of the Three Hills by visiting every hill and hillock of Gozo. He left no stone unturned to photograph even the most remote of places in this book. Mr. Grech emphasized the importance that we become more aware of our natural heritage and strive to protect these natural gems. Gozo may be small, but it is quite an endeavor for photographers to visit this island and manage to photograph beautiful landmarks and characters. Gozo is known for its quieter and slower lifestyle, and I hope that it remains like that. In my opinion, the scenic landscapes are perfect as a backdrop for many photographic opportunities. The island is much greener, more rural, and smaller, with centuries-old Baroque-style buildings and spectacular cliffs, fields, and valleys. Gozo and its inhabitants have their own distinct character and identity, who also offer a very good photographic opportunity. If one wants to capture the identity and cultural aspect of these people, I suggest you visit the small and rural villages. Personally, I love to travel to Gozo during springtime to capture the colorful mosaic of landscapes, seascapes, architecture, and also practice street photography, especially in the narrow winding streets of Victorian Cittadella. I am sure that this eve, my dear friend Anthony will show us and share with us most of his unique, innovative artistic photos, which during these past years have captured through his lens. This Saturday at 2 in the afternoon, we have the second judging of the stay-at-home competition series. The executive committee is planning to stream live via Zoom the judging process. By tomorrow, all participants and other paid-up members are going to receive the link to follow the judging. In total, there were 26 members who submitted their images, with a total of 78 color and/or monochrome projected images to be judged on the day. Results will be sent by our competitions manager in the following days. These will also be uploaded on our website, and we also invited the judges so that next week will join our webinar to give their feedback on some of the images which were submitted for this competition. So when I say some, because in total there are over 160 images, so I had to choose a couple of images, mainly one from each author. From time to time, we encourage our members to participate in international competitions. And today, I want to congratulate Mr. Johan De Bono, a member of the Malta Photographic Society, who during these past 4 months participated in various international competitions from 18 different countries who are affiliated with PSA, FIAP, and GPU. He was awarded with 2 bronze medals, 1 merit medal, 1 GIP medal, 9 honorable mentions, 2 diplomas, 1 certificate, and 188 acceptances, all during these past 5 months, between January and April. You are making a name for yourself. Well, Johan, well done. And you should be proud for what you have achieved in these past months and years. May I remind you that all acceptances and awards obtained in international competitions which the Society is affiliated to, up till today, are accepted should one decide to apply for one of the MPS distinctions, mainly the Associate of the Malta Photographic Society and the Fellowship of the Malta Photographic Society. Those interested to apply are encouraged to send an email to the Honorary Secretary, Mr. Leonard Cox, on info@mpsmalta.com. Applications for distinctions, accompanied by the appropriate fee, are processed twice a year. Mainly, these need to be received by the Honorary Secretary not later than the 30th of November and the 31st of May of each year. But in the coming months, we are planning, as I already have said in the previous webinars, to launch the new MPS distinction system, which is going to be based on panels and not on points. And now I hand over the floor to Mr. Anthony Grech to start with his presentation. Good luck, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Can niċċekkja ħabba tal-share screen. Okay. Tikkonfermaw l-waħda li suppost qed intaraw jekk jogħġobkom dejjem. Tajjeb, prosit. Mela, first of all, thank you for having me this evening. Basically, just a small introduction about myself. Very well said, by the way, the description that you just gave about my photographic career. Basically, I started when I was 17, 18 years of age. Basically, it's around 17 years experience because I'm now 34 years old nearly. So that's rather long way back when we started photography during my first years of photography. I was born and raised here in Gozo, so throughout this presentation, I will be dealing mostly with this particular island. That's why I've chosen this title, An Island That Inspires, because when one looks at this particular island, although it is small, it's only 14 kilometers by 7 kilometers, but it is full of photographic opportunities, be it natural, be it cultural, be it historical. There are different aspects on this little island, which obviously can be a great photographic opportunity for everyone to experience, first of all, and then also to photograph, to capture, because that's one of the most important things to keep in mind, that when taking photos, you have to feel something, and especially when you are portraying an image that you just took, it has to convey a message. It has to instill interest in anyone who is viewing that particular image. Apart from that, if anyone would like to stop me and ask any question, please feel free to leave the question inside the chat, the Zoom chat, and I would answer it happily your questions. Basically, throughout these 18 years, I started with a small Fuji camera, the A340. I started immediately on digital format, so I didn't have the film experience, unfortunately, because definitely it was a great word. But obviously, I started with the digital, and as time progressed, I changed from Fuji, which was a really small camera, onto the Canon brand. Although nowadays it's just a name, a brand. Obviously, the most important thing is not what type of equipment you have, but how you use it, how you use your equipment to capture these beautiful images that we have all around. Why Gozo? Obviously, Gozo, I've been born here. So basically this particular island mesmerizes me every time, because every time I go out, I find something interesting, even especially if you're living in Malta or else living abroad. When you come here to Gozo, you can immediately notice that even the air, even when you're going down from the ferry up to Ainsielam, Jar and Ainsielam, you will immediately notice that there is something different. And obviously, when looking through a photographic eye, you can immediately identify different images. Because most of the time, if we are dealing with, for example, tourists, all right, most of the time they go to different touristic destinations, like for example, Xewkija and other places. But there are a lot of other interest areas which are really interesting, and unfortunately, they are not even well documented. So having this opportunity to speak about these things and my experience roaming around this small island is really enriching for me, because I can share these experiences that I've experienced throughout these 18 years that I've been photographing Gozo. Different characteristics. Gozo is such a unique island because of its natural beauty, as I mentioned before, its cultural beauty, which unfortunately sometimes when we go to the mainland, to Malta, some of these characteristics have been lost. And at least in Gozo, we can still enjoy these areas, especially the green open areas. All right. When we compare Malta and Gozo, even geographically, it's totally different. I mean, Stephen mentioned one of my books, Gozo, the Island of Hills. Throughout when I was dealing with the research to publish that particular book, I started finding that in Gozo there are more than 33 hills, whilst in Malta the landscape is totally different. So even when planning to take a photograph, you have to take that in consideration, because in Malta it is more plain. There are more plains. While in Gozo, for example, you're planning to capture, for example, in that particular image, the sun setting behind the citadel, you have to take into consideration that it might be that there are hills in front of that particular scene. So you have to plan accordingly. Why this title, An Island That Inspires? Obviously, let's have a look about the derivation of inspire. It's derived from a Latin word which means to blow into, to breathe upon. And as I mentioned before, even when you leave the Gozo ferry and step onto this island, you can immediately notice that there is something different. All right. And obviously, to inspire, it's really important that with our photographs, we make someone have a particular strong feeling or reaction to it. I mean, photograph has been photographed for a long time. I was doing some research. One of the earliest, if I'm not mistaken, photograph of Gozo taken in Gozo dates back to the late 1800s, 1880s, if I'm not mistaken. It might be that there are earlier versions, but unfortunately, I didn't find the exact date. And this particular photo, if I'm not mistaken, was of Duera. Obviously, such places, they have their own characteristics. For example, Duera was mainly known for its iconic azure window, Teata Duera. Unfortunately, in 2017, we've lost. Although I said unfortunately, but the Duera area compromises of many other different things which are unique. For example, the Jabla tal-General, it's unique. For example, in that particular image, you can notice that there is a small hole inside that particular rock, which if you plan accordingly, you can get the actual sun ray passing through this particular hole, which is quite unique, because most of the times these areas have been photographed. If I'm not mistaken, the Azure window was voted as one of the most interesting places that have been photographed in Malta, basically, because most of the tourists used to come to Duera for the Azure window. But if you just roam around, for example, the Duera area, you have many other features, historical features, like, for example, the tower, the inland sea, the Jabla tal-General, and also the Duera Bay, which is rather unique. Obviously, you have to calculate things. You have to plan out your photographs, because most of the time you have two options. You either plan your photograph and actuate your photograph after all those plans that you have done, or else just coincidence. I mean, something that you're just at the right time, at the right place. Basically, throughout this presentation, you will find mostly a balance between these two, because when we're out there with our cameras, it might be that you have planned a good photograph, but it turns out that something happened. For example, you plan that the sun will pass through, for example, the Duera area, but unfortunately, a lot of clouds crop up. So it might be that there's something, and you have to adapt to those situations. Some questions. Why did I put out these questions? Because most of the time, we as photographers, and unfortunately, we are not giving enough emphasis on this. Photography is art. We are artists. We create our own photographic style. So basically, we have to keep in mind that when shooting, when taking photos, we have to portray an image that will convey a message, that will give out a message to the viewer. All right. Now it depends on the viewer to interpret it, just like when having a painting, and the artist just did the painting, and then the viewer interprets that painting. But some questions that we have to keep in mind are obviously really important. What are we going to shoot? Is it a normal scene, for example, just a scenic area, or, for example, a detail? What are we going to shoot? How? What type of equipment we are going to use? How? For example, what type of angle are we going to take the image? All right. Why? Is it, for example, are you commissioned by someone to take that particular image, or is it just for the, let's call it, portfolio, artistic value for you? When? Obviously, how and when most of the photographers, when seeing good images, those are the two important questions that most of the time they just ask. How did you take it? How did you do that photograph? And when? So that I can, let's use, copy sort of that image. Now, when dealing with that particular copy, preferably it's not copying. I prefer using the word to compare. All right, to compare your artistic ideas with others. Because when you're dealing with copying, I mean, you're just literally photocopying another person's idea, and that's it. But if you put your own thoughts in that particular photograph, obviously it will get more value. All right, not only sentimental value because you just took that image, but also artistic value because you have put your artistic style into that particular photo. Obviously, when taking photos, you have to keep all these things in mind to get good images. Again, as I've mentioned before, sometimes it's just pure coincidence. I mean, if you went out during sunset yesterday, I was just at my house over here, and all of a sudden, that huge sunset, that cloud formation that popped up out of nowhere, that red color, bright color, which was rather beautiful, unique. All right. So sometimes, yes, it happens. All right. But when you plan accordingly, all right, you plan your shot, you create your own shot. It's more sort of your shot because you created that particular shot. What inspires me? Every person, every photographer has his own particular inspiration. As also Stephen mentioned, I'm really inspired because, out of everyday life experiences that happen here in this island, different activities, feasts, fireworks, Mother Nature, which is really one of the most important aspects that we have to keep in mind, different landmarks that we have in Gozo, and obviously it's a personal preference. I really enjoy taking panoramas, but those are my inspirations, sort of. And basically, throughout this presentation, I'm going to split up these, let's call them inspirations, and have a look at them. Have a look at some images that I took. Again, if anyone would like to ask any question, please do so. All right, I'm here to answer your questions as well. So let's start. Everyday life. Schlendi Tower before the restoration started. Currently, it is under the restoration. Obviously, when shooting everyday life, I prefer placing some people inside that image because apart from the dimension that people create in photos, obviously you have something which is alive. All right, these type of photographs are mostly done for touristic purposes. All right, but still they can convey a great message. Obviously, the natural beauty and also the way how we can enjoy the outdoors, because one of the most important things, I think, I started into photography because I'm rather an adventurous person. So I combined adventure with photography. And when you combine those two things with each other, you have an explosive problem because you have to balance things out. For example, going back a little bit on this Dwayra shot, you have a mixture of adventure and photography. That particular area, there's a slope. So if you don't take the necessary measures to protect yourself, first of all right, you have to take care that you don't injure yourself, because in those places, obviously, if you get injured, it's a little bit difficult for help to arrive immediately. Again, in this particular area, ta' Sanab and ta' Ċenċ area, obviously people enjoying the outdoors. That's one of the most important aspects for me, that the message that you convey. Now, if you noticed, the dimension that one creates when shooting these type of images, both images were taken with a telephoto lens, with a 70-200 lens. So it's quite far away. So as such, the depth of field is like crammed, all right? But still, you can get the sort of power of those cliffs, all right? And the people enjoying that particular area. Again, Dwera Tower, for example. Now, one of the most important things that I find is that when I shoot images, I try to keep most of the images, even those which are not my personal favorite. All right. For example, in this particular case, I would have preferred, for example, that if the tower is open, usually they put up the flag. All right. It could be easily edited in. All right. I could easily put up a flag over there and it's ready. But I prefer to limit the edit process to try to keep an image as clean as possible. All right. If you get the right angle, you will you will try to find out the best angle. All right. Now, obviously, you don't have control over, for example, if the tower has the flag raised or not. So in that case, for example, in this particular image, I have to keep it in mind that if I'm in that area and I see the flag, which is raised, I have it in mind that I can shoot that image again. Obviously, those people, they might not be there, obviously, but something else might crop up, all right? Be it, for example, I don't know, an insect or a motorcycle or anything like that, but at least there is something which makes the image alive, all right? Now, if you notice, due to the Data Protection Act, these people, since I don't know them personally and I didn't get the written confirmation from them, I shot from behind. Therefore, even legally, you will be covered. Obviously, when dealing with these type of images, I try to place a landmark, a Godzitin landmark where possible. If you notice, we had Tasanap, we had Dwera Tower. In this particular case, it's rather sort of a question mark. Where was it taken? If you know the area, you might immediately notice, yes, that is from Imjar. When you walk from Imjar to Hondo, there is this particular landscape. So Godzitins, most probably, and those who love the outdoors will immediately notice. But those who don't know, all right, if you're portraying an island, you have to give sort of a landmark. So as much as possible, I try to place a landmark in view somewhere in the photograph to give an idea that, yes, we are dealing with this particular island. Like, for example, this case. In this case, this shot was taken, if I'm not mistaken, in a Bayer, Shweni area, near the salt pens. But if you don't know the story behind this photograph, you might say, listen, that was taken in America, anywhere, any place, all right? So if possible, try to include something which is local, either a church, either rock formation, something which is known to the people, to the locals, to even to the foreigners, so that you will give the photograph a context, all right? Because if we try to portray this image as an island that inspires, am I really sure that this photograph was taken in Gozo? All right, so I have to answer that question in my case. The traditional version of Gozo, all right? This again gives something which is really lovely about the Godzitin characteristics. Unfortunately, these type of images are diminishing, are actually going to zero. Because unfortunately, the traditional aspect of Gozo, we're losing some of these aspects. Now again, including architecture, including that person, most probably coming back from his fields, all right, gives you that feeling. These type of photographs, for example, if you convert them to black and white, it's a must, I mean, to convert them in black and white, because they give, there's a powerful kick that sometimes black and white gives to these type of photographs. Again, something which unfortunately we're losing. Now, these type of photographs, I have to mention this because it's sort of really important. I compare this type of style with, for example, Ted Attar's style of photography. Ted Attard in the 1990s, he succeeded, and even 80s, he succeeded in shooting rural Gozo in such a beautiful way that unfortunately, that's the only documented evidence of Gozo during that particular era, which is unfortunate sort of because we've lost it. But at least through Ted Attard's images, we still have a great copy of the Gozitan life at that time. Apart from that, I mentioned Ted Attard, there are others, Joseph Zammit, Daniel Celia, several other photographers, which did a real great job. Because if it wasn't for their photography, these type of aspects, we didn't have any documentative aspect from this particular era. Even this style, I mean, something which, again, you might see it in some villages in Malta and in Gozo, but which is becoming really rare. And it's really unfortunate because that's most of the tourists, when they come here to Gozo, they would love to see. For example, I met a fellow photographer nearly a month ago, and he mentioned that when he was young, there was a particular tourist, they were picking up lemons from Ramla Valley. And there was a particular tourist, they came by, they stopped the car, and they asked them just to cut the olives, the lemons and the oranges from the trees, so they can have that experience. Now imagine, with this particular image, you will convey that message that this is a style, all right, that you have to create, which will portray an image. Don't forget that when we take a photo, it's up to the viewer to interpret it. All right. Some would say, that's Gozo, it used to be like that 30, 40 years ago. Others might say, we've lost it. Others might say, it's really interesting. I mean, the way they are moving, the sheep, etc., are moving. So it's all based on different interpretations of that particular image. Activities. Obviously, in Malta and Gozo, both islands, we have a lot of activities. With regards to Gozo, obviously the Gozo Carnival, the Nadur Carnival, it's a must. And for photographers, it's sort of the playground for photography. If you want to take photos and if you want to practice your photography, it's there, it's open. Just get your camera, get out and take your photos. Create your own style. I mean, these particular activities, obviously you have to take the necessary precautions just to take care of your equipment, etc. But they will give you a great opportunity to test your equipment, to test yourself, to know your camera, to test your camera, all right? Be different. For example, in this particular case, it was shot with a wide-angle lens right in front of that person. So usually in my bag, later on I will deal with the equipment list, but usually I have zoom lens, mid-range, and the wide-angle, all right? So I have the whole range available when I'm taking photos. Usually at Nadur, if I'm going to the carnival, I just put up the wide-angle lens and literally go face-to-face with the revelers, because that will give such a good kick to your photograph. Obviously, some might say there's not enough light, but nowadays with the technological advancements that we have in cameras, with ISO performance is always improving the ISO performance, you can easily boost the ISO. If you're using an f2.8, it is much better, all right, because that you can get more information from the available light, all right, that you have available in this particular case from streets, from the party, from Nadur Carnival. Feasts. These are another aspect of the Gozitan culture which must be recognized, because unfortunately there are several Gozitan characteristics which are not properly recognized both by the authorities and also by the locals, because unfortunately, even for example, when dealing with the outdoors, with pure nature, most of the time, all right, it's either hunters, fishermen, and tourists that really enjoy the outdoors. Unfortunately, the locals, because when you're living on an island, if you don't have that particular interest to go out, unfortunately, you will not discover the whole island. I mean, I've been around the coast of Gozo for several times, so I know a little bit about the island, but obviously, the more you go out, the more you'll learn. Back to the religious festivities, the feasts, all right? The outdoor events, for example, in this particular case, the procession at the Gozo Cathedral, 15th August. It's such a huge feast, and practically every week you have a different feast. I mean, when you consider Gozo, in Malta, there are different villages at the same weekend, on the same weekend. So you have a lot of opportunities. But you have to go out, you have to practice, you have to place that camera in front of your face and take the images. Obviously, in this particular case, again, a wide angle lens was used just to get the emotion of the people taking part in the procession, a little bit of the architecture behind it. So that gives a good feeling that that's a good feast. Obviously, apart from the outdoor procession, there are also the internal festivities, which again offer a great photographic opportunity. Obviously, it's totally different because you're in a church, it's a religious ceremony, you cannot roam around freely, sort of, there's a mass going on, so you have to take care not to disrupt the mass. But if you place yourself into strategic positions, you can get very good images. I mean, in this particular case, St. Francis in Victoria, all the traditional features related to this feast are in one shot. You have the people, the devotees, the statue, the priest, everything. Also the equipment, the cross, the lanterns being used in the procession, everything literally compressed in one image. Don't forget that when we shoot these type of images, be it activities, be it feasts, etc., it's rather a documentative process. So when dealing with documentative process, you have to give a real good feel of such documentation. If, for example, we have a look at the old photographs that were taken, like for example, Richard Ellis, all right, and the Ellis collection, you will immediately start noticing, listen, for example, this is this church, look at how it was built, notice the clothes these people are wearing. Don't forget that the images we take today, they are history literally in the making. So do good images so that in the future, people who visit, hopefully, your photographic archives will have a real good feel of what it used to be like. Don't forget, we live in a digital era. Therefore, there's nothing tangible. All right. Unfortunately, that's a problem that hopefully we will not suffer from that. Because when we were dealing with film, you had the actual print. When we are dealing with digital, it's just saved somewhere in the server, in your hard drive, and that's it. All right. So publishing your images, it's really good, even for documentative purposes. Band marches, obviously in this particular case, again, Santa Maria, St. Mary feast in Victoria, the emotions. An image has to portray emotions. In this particular case, there's a particular men march, where this huge flag is taken down from the cathedral to the Aurora band club, the Leone Band Club, and obviously the children carry this flag, and there are all sort of emotions running through these little kids. Ben marches again. In this particular case, St. George in Victoria as well. Again, the emotions that you get from these particular documentative images, it's really important to convey that those emotions. Another aspect related to village feast, but which also really interesting, fireworks. I'm into fireworks, so I've been shooting fireworks for a long time. My father used to work fireworks, but I never worked fireworks, but I really enjoy photographing the fireworks. In this particular case, as I said, I always try to include a landmark. In this case, if it's a village feast, obviously you have to include the village church in this particular case. So this was shot in Sannat Square. That's the grand finale, the fireworks display, the grand finale that they carry out. And obviously I wanted to get the real feel as the procession was leading back to the church. There's this grand finale display, fireworks display going on, and people enjoying the fireworks even from the village square. So basically I just went there with a wide angle lens and took this particular image, which, by the way, these type of fireworks are enormous. They are huge. So that's why I always use a wide angle lens in these type of shots, so I get all the firework explosion.
Anthony,
Yes.
if I may interrupt you a little bit regarding fireworks, I would like to say something because it is quite interesting, and I came across this around 2 years ago. I was working for some clients in a feast, in a particular feast. I was shooting a particular feast, and uh, one thing that they asked me to cover, obviously, the fireworks as well. But then they told me, listen, we do not want the fireworks as photographers shoot them. We want them like they are obviously worked in the factories, as in they wanted to show the bursts, it's like spots. And which brings me to the point of asking you the difference of, because as you know, I had to shoot them with a different technique. It's not like long exposure, it's quite different. You have to bump up the ISO practically so that you can higher the shutter speed. It was completely different. What do you make of this? Have you came across, given that you're saying that even your father was into fireworks? Because actually, the people that do fireworks, they do not want photographs like these, but they want them in this technique that I was quite surprised, to be honest with
Yes,
you.
basically there are these two different types. It's either long exposure, like in this case, which obviously works great if you are portraying this image and selling this image to a touristic sort of
That's right.
arena. But when dealing with fireworks enthusiasts, all right, and those who literally work fireworks, they would prefer like having a very fast shutter speed so that they can notice whether all the small parts of the firework actually lit up or not. All right. So basically, there are two school of thoughts. Basically, in this case, most of the time, I would shoot these type of style, but obviously, it depends on your client, who your client is. If they ask for that type of photographs, which is basically getting the burst of the explosion, all right, getting all the different particles of the firework. Yes, in that case, you have to take the photographs in that particular style, right?
Yes.
It depends who your client is. I mean, and your personal style as well.
Yes, and it was quite challenging because before doing that, I had to go to some fireworks and do it. I
Yeah,
do some practice, because it's not as easy as it seems.
no, especially for focusing,
No,
it's a little bit difficult because
it's
you
a
have
little
to
bit
literally
difficult.
follow the explosive material going up, and as it explodes, you just track literally the firework in the sky. So it's a little bit more challenging. Obviously, these two styles are challenging. If you're shooting the style that you are mentioning, you have to follow everything. If you're shooting the long exposure, you have to make sure that everything is steady, or else you will get everything messed up. For example, in this particular shot, I just put my camera on the tripod next to a donut stand. So imagine people roaming around buying donuts and trying not to hit the tripod and all that commotion around me. But at least I already try to get a very good image out of that experience. But yes, there are two different school of thoughts.
Thank you, Anthony.
Welcome. Mela, apart from wide angle shots, I also most of the time move out of the village, because the skyline, as noticed from another village, for example, it might be totally different. For example, in this case, that's ICLM church, and this particular photograph was taken with a 400mm from Ala. So that was basically some 4 kilometers away from the shooting area. Why did I do that? I knew that there was a huge structure, fireworks structure, that most probably will shoot up the fireworks further up. Therefore, I wanted to literally dwarf the church. That's why I had to move back. I went to Ala and shot this image to get that type of result. Obviously, again, in this type of situation, that's a long exposure. That's a long exposure. This was shot last year. Again, it's a long exposure. Those are basically two big fireballs exploding in the sky, and on the 15th of August. I've been trying to get this type of shot for nearly 3 years. Why? Because I wanted literally the explosion coming out from the Gozo Cathedral. So basically, you have to align everything so that you have the sort of umbrella effect, lighting up not only the citadel, but also the Gozo Cathedral, which is the middle part of the fountain on the citadel, and obviously the fireworks exploding on top of the citadel. Again, as I mentioned, these are two different firework balls. What happened? Basically, I just held the shutter open, and two fireworks, they fired nearly at an interval of, if I'm not mistaken, 6-7 seconds interval, and obviously I got both images, both fireworks in one particular image. Now, when dealing with fireworks, there are other people who do, for example, what is called as stacking. So basically, you just leave the tripod with the camera on top, you take the photographs, and then you stack the images on the computer. It can be done. I mean, I've seen photographs, for example, a firework from one particular village. They extracted from that particular photograph and then put it on another village photograph. So yes, with Photoshop, for example, these can be done, but personally, I don't like that type of images. I mean, it's not authentic. The feel that you have to get from these particular images, it has to be authentic. It's that particular feast with that particular fireworks, and obviously, these were shot during this particular feast. All right, so that's, for me personally, that's a must with regards to photographs. Again, this was a long exposure. If I'm not mistaken, this was taken near Tahamet Church. When you go from Victoria to Shara, all right, there's Tahamet Church, and it was taken from that area, basically from the middle of a field. I just sneaked into a field and placed my tripod. Fortunately enough, it was night, so no one saw me, and the farmer didn't notice that I was there. while saying this, please, as a photographer, know your boundaries. I mean, if there is a sign, no entry, it's a no entry zone. If, for example, you notice a field which is full of crops, try to limit your footprint as much as possible. Try to use the side area, for example, if you're entering. If there's the farmer, for example, ask him for permission. Because, I mean, it's mutual respect. I respect you, then most of the times they just tell you, yes, no problem, go take a shot and go back. Mother Nature. This again
Anthony,
is... Yes,
sorry for
speaking.
interrupting. Was that Santa Maria? We have a question.
Yes, Santa Maria, last year, 2020.
Thank you.
They didn't do the celebration, sort of outdoor celebration. They just did the internal celebrations, and they had a fireworks display on the day. So that's the conclusion, sort of that particular day. Another aspect which I really love is Mother Nature. Very similar to fireworks, but these are electrical fireworks and are much more dangerous, basically. Obviously, you have to go out there. Basically, I just have the Lightning Maps app switched on every time a storm is coming so that I'll be prepared. I calculate the wind. For example, the storm is coming from the north, so I have to go to the south to catch something which is coming towards me. And obviously, I have to take different photographs so that at least you get a very good lightning bolt, which in some cases, in some storms, it's easy because you have more lightning coming down. In other cases, you only have few lightning bolts, and unfortunately, all you have to do is pack your things up after shooting, go back, and hopefully you are hopeful for another storm in the near future. Unfortunately, throughout this year, we didn't have a lot of lightning, so hopefully we'll have some. This particular image, just to get you in context, this was shot from Kantra area, Taċenċ, and over there that's Mġarixxini Tower. Basically, the sea was so rough that the wave was near the same height as the tower. Now you can imagine such power, Mother Nature has such power that it's incredible. I mean, and to document these events, that's incredible. That's Mother Nature right in front of you. That's why we have to protect Mother Nature, because obviously it gives great shows, great natural shows, but we have to protect Mother Nature as well. Something which recently, throughout this last year, a year and a half, I've been interested in the moon, the full moon, especially the super moons. Unfortunately, if I'm not mistaken, the last two super moons that we had throughout this year, we didn't enjoy the real beauty of such super moons because we had several low-lying clouds. Personally, the best images of the moon is just when it gets a little bit above the horizon. In this particular case, this was taken in Marsal Forn, that's our outla. I planned this image and I told my father, listen, you're going to have a fishing rod and you have to stay in that particular area and you have to stay there so that we get a photograph, the moon coming up, rising from the horizon, and you're just fishing. But when we went there, we found these two people fishing in that particular area. So basically, they just replaced, in this case, my father, so that I took this particular image. This was taken with a 400mm, and if I'm not mistaken, even with a crop sensor, so I can get that extra magnification. So in that particular case, yes, I needed that particular zoom.
I am appreciating your photography because it's nearly not edited at all, some fine editing, and you see the picture yourself and you study the areas where you need to position yourself to take your photos. Especially in this instance, for example, You knew from where the moon was emerging, and also placing the human element to increase that aspect of attention, and as you said before, giving it more humanistic approach.
And that's important because when dealing with these type of photographs, I mean, you have to create sort of perspective, and apart from that, also including local landmark, like for example, in this case, our outlaw, which is really known in Marsalforn. I mean, people immediately notice that yes, that's our outlaw. And when you see both our outlaw in this case and the moon in comparison with each other, it's really, really interesting. Later on throughout this presentation, I'm also showing you some apps that you can use to track, for example, the moon and also the sun that you it's just a simple website that you can use, and it's really easy and gives you an idea where the moon is rising or setting, and even the sun. In this particular image, again, super moon rising behind the Gozo Cathedral. Now, obviously, to create this type of photograph, you have to plan very well ahead. I mean, I've been tracking the moon, just calculating the exact area, the exact angle that you have to position yourself in, so that you get the moon exactly at the perfect position. All right. It was a little bit tricky to get the exact moon behind the cross, but still it gives you a lot of satisfaction when you get the shot. And usually when I have a good shot, I start smiling immediately, and the way I drive back home to just quick edit the image, the smile is really remarkable on my face. Obviously, it's all a natural element. It might be that clouds, there are low-lying clouds, and you can't get the powerful image that you are envisaging, but still, you have to wait another 28 days so that you have another full moon. If it's a sunrise, tomorrow you'll have a different sunrise. If it's a moonrise, you have to wait a long way, 28 days, which is a little bit long, but unfortunately, you have to wait all those days.
Anthony, Paul is asking you, what is the focal length you used for this type of image?
This particular image was shot from Kerchem, again a 400 millimeter on a cropped sensor, and I had to zoom a little bit even in the image. So basically it's around 600 millimeter, sort of, all right? Don't forget that when you position yourself away from the subject, it will appear a little bit larger. So that's why, for example, the supermoon, obviously, it's a supermoon. Therefore, when rising behind the horizon, it looks bigger. All right. Apart from that, if you place an object or a landmark in front of that particular, for example, case, the moon, and which is far away from you, that's why I use the 400 millimeter. It will seem to be bigger than normal. But that's that particular image, because I had a lot of questions. Is that edited? Did you enlarge the moon? Did you color the moon? Yes, because usually we notice it's a pure white moon. But when the moon is rising, it's always reddish because of refraction, light refraction, etc. That's reality. I mean, I've even shot time lapses of the moon rising behind landmarks, so that because people sometimes they say no, it's not reality, but yes, that's reality. Go out and notice the moon rising behind a landmark, for example, if you're a little bit far away, 4 kilometers, for example, from the landmark, and you will see that effect, which is beautiful.
And there's a comment here that we are discussing, in fact, about that crane.
Mhm.
What was you tempted to remove it, or you just left it at, because it, as you said, when you see it again this in 20 years time, it will be totally different, maybe with buildings in the background.
even within 1 year. Most probably that building that they are doing over there, the construction they're doing, it might be finished and they removed it. So it's history in the making, basically. But yes, in some cases, I get tempted to remove it. But it depends. In this particular image, I've left it because it created of a sort of a triangular formation. Basically, the moon, the tip of the triangle, and then when you open it, you have the crane, you have the clock at the end of the bastions, and then all the bastions forming the base of the triangle, and then lifting up through the other clock, and also the facade of the church and the moon. So yes, I get tempted. Sometimes I remove it because if it's a real eyesore, yes, I have to remove it. Apart from cranes, even wires, etc. I mean, that's horrible. But in this case, even the fact that it was low lit, it didn't bother me that much. So that's why, yes, I've left it over there. But again, it's different opinions. I mean, everyone has different opinions. Apart from full moon, obviously, you also have a small slice of the moon. Like, for example, in this case, I was just going to Tapino Church, and I've noticed the Arp Church, and this particular crescent type of moon. And apart from that, you also have the whole circle of the moon. I don't know if it's showing or not, but in the original photo, you can actually track the whole circle of the moon. So basically, it's sort of, is it there or is it not there? So that's why I showed this type of image. Again, that particular flag, does it bother me? It bothers me a little bit, but if I'm not mistaken, it was a week before their feast. So it's normal to have flags raised up. Landmarks. Now, these are my favorites. Hopefully, I will hurry up a little bit as well. Landmarks. Tourists, even people, normal people, when they visit Gozo, they visit these landmarks. Now, myself, as a photographer, I always have this sort of dilemma. I know what others shot. I want to create something different. And that's the difference between copying and studying, comparing, and creating something different, which is totally different. Copying, again, is just copying someone else. Someone took an image and I just went over there at the same time and tried to copy that image. But when I study, compare, and capture a different type of image, I created something different. Like, for example, in this case, L'Oria ta Salvator Hill. It has been visited by thousands. But obviously, try to create something different. In this case, for example, shot with a long lens, because over there the fields are terraced, so you can easily position yourself with this type of greenery and take this type of image. But you have to keep your eyes on. That's one of the most important things that we as photographers have to keep in mind. Look in a photographic way. Try to capture an image with your eyes before actually capturing on a camera, because that's really important. Now, sometimes pre-visualization is essential. Like, for example, the shots that I took of the full moon, super moon, yes, I had to pre-visualize it. I have to plan it. I have to think about it. The moon is rising from that position, so I have to position myself here. But if I want to create this type of images, I have to go out. I have to try different angles. If I want to approach from the north, from the south, different seasons, different lighting opportunities. Is it shot in the morning? Is it shot midday or in the evening or afternoon? So I have to keep all these things in my mind when taking a good photograph. Like, for example, in this case, again, I pre-visualized the image, the sun setting right behind Ta Jordan Lighthouse. I wanted that particular image. So I went to the beach, shot straight into the sun and also the Ta Jordan Lighthouse. I was happy. This was shot, if I'm not mistaken, 5 years ago, something like that. I was starting to think again, going back and shooting again this type of image. Why? Because now I've gained more experience. It might be that there will be different cloud formations. It might be that I can create something different. But again, I'm not going to copy exactly this image, which basically it's mine, but I want to create another image, which again, hopefully will be a good one, an image that will leave an impact on the viewer. This one, I've been racing to get this image. It gives me headaches because I went over there. This was shot from Nadur on the way to Ramla with the 400 millimeters. That's Shara Church and Takola Windmill. Unfortunately, the Gozo skyline, unfortunately, is being ruined, basically, because of the high-rise buildings, etc. Because of the construction sites, different apartments, etc. But that's why I tried to take this particular image. Most probably, if you notice, next to the Shara windmill, there is a small sort of balcony. Most probably they will just build on top and it will be dwarfed. You can't see it anymore. So that's why I made it a point that yes, I want that image. I went, if I'm not mistaken, either 2 times or 3 times. In the first 2 experiences, it was a total disaster because there were a lot of clouds and I didn't get that sort of ball of fire. But on the 3rd time, I was lucky enough. I planned it beforehand and I got the shot that I wanted, which I'm happy about it because it's something which is not normal. Unfortunately, when dealing with these landmarks, we have a lot of normality, but think outside the box. How can you create something which is visually different? All right, and that's really important. San Dimitri Chapel, again, a lot of people visit San Dimitri Chapel, but try to capture it in a different way. There was just a field with clover, etc. I just jumped in that field, put the camera literally on the ground and shot upward so that I get that sort of where my effect. All right, again, with a wide angle so that I can get as much information as possible. Which is pretty interesting because I'm a tall guy, so usually I can have a look on top of everyone's heads. But sometimes, even when you go down, it's a different perspective. That technique that I just mentioned, the where my technique, it's really interesting because that's a total different perspective that one can enjoy. Mġarixxini, again, landmarks and human participation matched together. Malta in the background. Shot with a telephoto lens, 70-100. Rather simple in technique, but it strikes. When you see it, there's something which is striking, which definitely is that human being paddling into the Mġarixxini Bay. Apart from that, he used a canoe which was really bright, therefore immediately your eye will catch, the attention will be directed towards him. Xewkija Church. I've chosen 2 images of Xewkija Church. Why? Because we have seen thousands of images of Xewkija Church. But, as I mentioned before, try to be different. Try to create something which is different from the norm. All right, like for example, in this case, the sun setting behind the church, but there's also the natural aspect, the leaves, all right, the branches, and therefore creating something which is different. Now, let's call this the traditional way. But if you want to create something different, try to push yourself to get something different. For example, in this case, in this particular image, I planned it beforehand. I went to Ala. This was shot all the way from Ala, next to Bukket. Shots, there's a sort of line of sight, Xewkija Church, and then the sun setting behind Xewkija Church. As I was walking through the narrow passage that they had over there, I noticed this particular scene, the church, the sun, engulfed literally in these branches. And as I was literally mesmerized by this type of sort of formation. It's something which you don't see it that much. That's why even beforehand I said, take the photo with your eyes before taking the photo with your camera, because you have to look out. I mean, you have to look up, down, around you. Try to create an image, which is really, really powerful. With Lasri, again, a traditional aspect. Why did I choose this particular photo? The human aspect. There are hikers on the top right-hand side. There are people on the pebbles. There are people sunbathing, creating a sort of a lively area. Now, unfortunately, not sometimes, but most of the times, Gozo is portrayed as sort of an idyllic place, which with nothing to do, sort of. But every corner in Gozo, you can find something different. I mean, even roaming around in Witlasi area, there are a lot of people going around, diving, swimming, try to capture these things. ICLM Church. Why I chose this particular image. My initial plan was having the sun just behind the windmill and getting the sun sort of encircled into the windmill, and then ICLM Church and the famous crane, as usual. But what happened is that you can notice that there is a cloud formation. So the sun wasn't visible until it went up over the cloud formations. But still, it's a powerful image. So some might say there is that lens flare. Do you leave it over there? Personally, I don't mind because you're shooting straight into sunlight. So basically, that's sort of natural to happen into lenses. You can remove it, but personally, I think that if you remove that lens flare, that image is ruined. But obviously, that's different opinions that we might have. Panoramas. I really enjoy shooting panoramas. Why? Sometimes the 3x2 format, for me, it's limitative. I mean, if I go somewhere and try to literally compress everything into a 3x2 format, it can't fit. So I really enjoy shooting these type of panoramas. For example, in this case, 4 different hills over here. Basically, if you go, yes, they've removed the haystack. If you go over there, over Arilma, there is Arilma, Tatbieġi, Fanalta Jordan, and Tamar Hill. 4 hills in one photo. If I shot at 3x2 format, you cannot get that feel. But with these type of panoramas, you can have sort of a extreme wide-angle view of the area. Even in this particular photo, for example, you have San Dimitri Chapel, you have Fanalta Jordan, you also have Xewkija Church and Xewkija at the background. You also have this particular farmer over there. It's really small, but panoramas, once you enlarge them, you will immediately notice all the details. I love them. So it's a personal preference. I love shooting 3x2s, but again, panoramas are something which are really impressive, sort of. Like, for example, in this case, Tavecchia, it's on your way to Xewkija, you will find this particular hillock. Interesting. You have also Fanalta Jordan at the background. Obviously, the greenery. If you try to encompass this image in a 3x2, it won't fit. Through the panorama, again, I try to get all the information in this particular image. This was taken on the 1st of January, if I'm not mistaken, 2020, 1st of January, because I have this tradition. I shoot the sun going down on the 31st of December and then sun rising on the 1st of January. So basically, within few hours time, I get 2 different shots, sun going down in this case, 2019 was, and sun going up, 2020 in this case. That's a panorama taken from Imjar Harbour. just beneath Fort Chambre. There are huge boulders. You just go down. The sky was great. I mean, you can't find any words to describe that particular sky formation, cloud formation. And obviously, you try to get that feeling. This was taken a day before. I forgot to swap them. This was taken on the 31st of December. This particular area, it's what is rather remote. It's called Ras Nawiela. Basically, the cliffs that you have on the right-hand side, that's the beginning of Tachench cliffs, and then all the way to Tasanap, etc. I was there with a friend of mine trying to get this particular shot. Then all of a sudden, a group of youths came in and they placed themselves perfectly in the image. So sometimes coincidence. I mean, it's rather luck is rather on our side as well. This shot at Dweira Bay, again, it's a panorama showing the whole dimension that you're trying to compress in one particular image. Then again, some people might say that's too much. Our eyes cannot handle all that information. Our eyes don't work in that particular style. But still, it's a personal preference, which I really like. Basically, when you take panoramas, you're just taking different shots and then attaching them with each other on the computer. Equipment used throughout these years, I've used several equipment, but these images that I've just shown you were mainly shot on a Canon 60D and also the 6D. My personal choice, the wide angle 11 to 16 f2.8. Then I also have the other lenses, so I have all the focal range available. Now, you might say, you also mentioned the 400mm. Where is it? Basically, for the 400, I use the 70 to 200 and the 2x extender. So basically, you get the 400mm. That's why. Useful apps that obviously you can use. Obviously, Google Earth, Google Maps, Street View. When planning your shot, these are great apps that you can use to create your own photos. Windfinder, obviously, when we're referring to weather, so that you can plan, for example, if the clouds are coming in from the south side, where are you going to place yourself, etc. And then the app, the website that I mentioned beforehand, which you can use so that you can plan the trajectory of the sun and of the moon, the photographer's ephemeris, which is a really handy tool that you can use to plan your photos. Obviously, there are other apps, but these are the apps that I usually use to plan my photographs. Some tips to conclude. We're nearly at the end. Love and respect the outdoors. That's really important. As I mentioned before, if you want to enjoy the outdoors, yes, no problem, enjoy it, but please don't make a mess. Practice with regards to photography. Practice is one of the most important things. If you have a football team and they didn't practice, it means that they're a mess. They're not going to succeed. And in photography, yes, that's the same thing. Learn from your own mistakes. That's really important. Keep all the images unless they are totally out of focus or totally over or underexposed, but keep them as a reference. If you want to go again and shoot, for example, that particular image, you can have already an image to help you out in your pre-work. Know your limitation. That's especially for your health and safety. All right. If you have to climb a hill, all right, know your own limitations, your health, take care of yourself. Something which is really important, study and compare your work with others. We are not copying, we are comparing our images with each other so that we can learn from our own mistakes, and improve our photography. That's why the last tip, be open for critique. I mean, unfortunately, in Malta and in Gozo, there are some photographers which are really sort of picky when you tell them, listen, try to improve the angle. Unfortunately, yes, you have to be open for critique. It's for your own good, to improve yourself, to improve your photographic style. Any questions that there might be?
Actually, we've put a poll regarding the lens flare, and out of those who voted, 71%, 12 out of those 70 who voted agree with you. They would leave the lens flare even if they would submit the photo in a competition. Obviously, we ask that because there is a difference of when you're presenting an image for an exhibition and when you're representing it for a competition. I mean, but
sometimes
I also agree with you. I would leave the lens flare because, as you said, it's part of the technique that creates the lens when shooting facing the sun.
Sometimes it's good. In other cases, it might be distracting. So you have to be to make the judgment practically. It's either you leave it or you keep it.
Yes.
But it depends on the mood that that particular image and the way that you want to portray it.
That's right.
Thank you very much for having me. I think I've spoken a lot. I try to be as open as possible, to try to give a wide spectrum about my photographic sort of endeavors and career. Practice, that's the most important thing. Thank you very much, Vince.
It was very interesting, and you really made obviously good research. I mean, you know you're the island well, and I mean you've got experience shooting Gozo. It really explained for me an island that inspires. The title you really explained, expressed yourself in a way, and your photography is it's I mean I really like it. I agree with Stephen with
many are writing words of praise here. You can read, Anthony, while you're listening to us doing some conclusions. I agree with you, Vince, that Anthony gave us a very interesting presentation showing most of the landmarks, and from a different perspective. We see a lot of images of Gozo, even in postcards, in magazines, but it's always nice to see the works of others to inspire yourself.
Yes, and Stephen, the fact that Anthony knows the place well. Each photo, what really struck me was that he researched well, and he linked every particular detail in the photo to something that relates to Gozo. The fact that he chooses also a landmark as a basis for his building a photo and being the main focus in his photo, that really struck me. Well done. It's something that you studied well, and it's really good.
Thank you very much, and also thanks for all the comments that I'm just reading out through the comments.
Yes.
Really, thank you.
Well deserved, Anthony. Well deserved, and we thank you for sharing with us. I mean, this is what we look for. I mean, thank you to Stephen for suggesting. I mean, scouting and introducing you to us, obviously, for giving us this webinar, because really and truly we learn from discovering different talents, and this is all about, I mean, photography. This is all about sharing our passion and learning from each other.
Anthony, we mentioned that you have publications. How can one buy, if he's interested to buy these publications? How can he reach you or find these books? Can you give us more information?
Mela, basically, with regards to Gozo, I had two different publications. One, which was, unfortunately, for many people, it was sold out immediately, and there are a lot of people still asking me for this particular book, which was Gozo, the Enchanting Coastline. Basically, I tracked all the coastline, the Gozo coastline, and documented it through photography. And then I also have another book, which is Gozo, the Island of Hills. which again, I only have a very limited amount remaining. These are photography books with detailed captions with regards to historical, cultural, etc. features. For example, with the book Gozo, the Island of Hills. As I mentioned before, throughout the research process, I found nearly 33 hills. Now, obviously, Gozo is known as the Gozo, the island of the three hills, but it has to be multiplied several times. So, yeah, basically, I only have a few copies of this particular book. Anyone who is interested can contact me on Facebook. Just type in Anthony Grech, and there's my face. So you can easily send me a message over there. Hopefully, we'll try to have another go. It's still about Gozo. There's another publication, but due to COVID, I had to limit a lot my roamings around. And apart from that, even due to the fact that one cannot organize, for example, a proper book launch, etc. Therefore, I had to postpone everything back. But yes, there is something coming up. Hopefully, in the near future, we'll publish it. But obviously, you have to study what's going on as well, because right now we try to fight this war first, this pandemic, and then hopefully we'll give it a push more on the cultural side, which is really important. And that's why before I mentioned photography, it's an art, all right? And an art with a capital letter. It's not something that, for example, most of my images deal with landscape. There might be some people who say, it's just easy, you just go out with a camera, look at a scene, take the photo, and that's it. No, that's not reality. I mean, to get a good image, you have to study, you have to practice, you have to take a good shot, editing as well involved. All right, so that's a whole package. That's why I always refer to photography as an art, because like an artist have studied and expressed themselves on the canvas, even we as photographers, we express ourselves in that particular photograph, which for me, it's really important. It's like just like
Stephen,
a Bible.
Stephen, we've got a very good, maybe obviously I'm going to repeat, we've got a very good suggestion from Walter. I'm going to place this obviously as food for thought for discussion with the committee, obviously for yourself to discuss even with them. Maybe we could organize a day together with Anthony, obviously, and he will take us to places, things being obviously in when the COVID thing is over, obviously, we're saying. But it would be a good idea, maybe, if the society would try to organize something a day in Gozo, if Anthony would be willing to take us around and take us to some interesting landscapes around the beautiful island of Gozo.
Yes,
No problem at all.
I totally agree, and also ask Anthony if he has material to share with us, even for future publication, we will distribute with our members. So kindly do not hesitate to contact me, and as a society, we will share, because we value local photographers, and we need to push our photographers to others to get to know them and also to appreciate their work. So do so, Anthony.
Very good.
No, for me, I mean, I accept immediately, so that if you're coming over here to go, so just phone me up and off we go.
Yeah. Thank you. Any questions?
Emmanuel Muscat is asking maybe if he can give us some information about the Gozo Photography Association and how you promote it.
Basically, this was a project that we set up, myself and Paul Cicluna, some years ago. We tried to create the Gozo Photography Association. We did several activities, etc. Lately, we didn't organize and we didn't meet that much, obviously because of COVID, etc. Hopefully, we're hoping that as time progresses, hopefully we'll be back because it's really a pity that In Malta, there are two different associations related to photography, sort of, and in Gozo, there was something missing. And that's why we try to create this, what we have called the Gozo Photography Association. We also had the Facebook page, but again, we didn't sort of organize anything recently. So the last update is, I think, last year or something like that. So it has been a long time. Last month we tried to organize something, but again, due to the restrictions, we were really limited to the number of people we can accept sort of on these photo outings. Hopefully we'll start again, because that's really something which brings together all photographers with each other. And I would really like to give you a well done for what you have done in creating these type of webinars, because it's sort of linking with each other, learning from each other, and that's one of the most important things, that you learn from each other and share what you know. Because unfortunately, if you don't do that, it's just building a wall, a huge wall around you, and that's it. But through these webinars, well done, because they're really useful and really informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for appreciating our work. We try to, obviously, as we say, we try to keep the Malta Photographic Society club members and even non-club members who are joining and who are obviously always welcome to this big family, we call it, Stephen, of the Malta Photographic Society. Obviously, so since the club had to close, unfortunately, due to COVID. But in some way or another, we tried to keep the passion going on, and in such a way also try to do it in a way to learn and invite guest speakers and learn photography. Stephen, we remind them about the judging, or you've also already mentioned it in your commentary, the judging about next Saturday.
Between today and tomorrow, everyone is going to receive the link, the Zoom link.
Yes, and next week we're going to have a very interesting discussion regarding the submissions of the stay-at-home competition.
Some of them, yeah.
Some of them, obviously, but it will be another session for you not to miss and to join us, because I'm sure from the comments given by our seasoned judges who will be participating, right, Stephen?
Yeah.
Will be participating. I'm sure you will get to learn, or you get some ideas of how you can present differently, or also maybe better your images, especially in preparation, because you can use these in preparation for then submitting them, hopefully, for the annual, which is the Rolls-Royce competition of the Malta Photographic Society. I don't have anything more to add. Stephen, maybe you have something else?
No, that's all. I would like to say thank you for everyone that they joined us, and wish you a happy weekend.
Thank you, guys. As we always tell you, happy weekend and stay safe. See you next week. Goodbye.